so, I want to just share some wisdom and thoughts as it pertains to, yes, physical health, but also this whole concept of holistic well-being. And when I say holistic, what I mean by that is a couple different things. I touched on this at the beginning, that this understanding that everything in our body is connected, but also that there is not a single part of our life that isn't communicating with our bodies and kind of co-creating the physical health of our bodies. And I call that our life ecosystem, right? So the decisions we make day in and day out and how we live our life. I look at physical health as ultimately a reflection of the quality of our life and if we're living in alignment and in harmony. So I want to share just a couple of really simple things that can help build on that and solidify that as we continue to journey into spring. And you can get comfortable if you brought your journal and you want to write some things down, go for it. I did bring some paper that's up in that windowsill, and there's pens up there too. So if you want to write anything down, go for it. If you want to just let it hang out in your brain, that's perfectly fine too. So, when I think about the practices of spring, and some of these will be tangible, simple practices you can put into place. Others are more kind of like a paradigm and an operating system for how you do approach life and the values and priorities that you build into your life. But these are really all things that we can practice to allow our bodies to fully embrace spring and fully embrace the season of vitality and this reawakening that we talked about at the beginning. And when we tune into the seasons in any capacity, even if we might not be, like we talked about, mentally, emotionally in that matching season, when we tune into the seasons and what's happening in the natural world, it's automatically a huge step in the right direction of creating harmony and alignment in the body. Because when we are disconnected from this earth and this world around us, the body feels that, whether we realize it consciously or not. And we always hold the power to change the trajectory that our body is on. And our body has a magnificent healing system built in when it's given the right resources to kind of calibrate that healing system. And so we can think about really every choice that we make, every breath we take, step we take throughout the day. That is an opportunity to send a signal of health to our body and to let our body kind of take notes and let our nervous system say, oh, this is what we're doing. We're getting the resources we need so that our cells can do the jobs that they were designed to do. Because I always say this, but our cells each come with their own little brain. They know what their roles are. They know what their function is in the body, but they have to sense that they have the resources to do their assigned job. And so that's really up to us, is cultivating a life ecosystem of the resources that allow the body to thrive, because the body doesn't make mistakes. It makes adaptations, meaning when we experience symptoms and conditions and illness, and there are absolutely times there are things like genetics at play. I've always been of the mindset that we definitely can kind of be behind the driver's seat and the steering wheel even of our genetics, but there are things that are of course out of our control sometimes. But for the most part, when the body has some sort of maladaptation, it's trying to talk to us. It's trying to tell us something needs to be shifted or recalibrated within this life ecosystem to support healing and health. So let's talk about these. I just have 6 simple things I want to share that we can put into place, and these are accessible to every single one of us in this room. They're not exclusive products. These are just truly simple, easy things. And number one, and a lot of you have been in circles and gatherings like this before, so this won't be new, but I mention it every talk because it really is that important. is connecting with the light. And when I say light, I mean this beautiful light that we're getting a little taste of through these windows. But the sunlight, and letting our body harmonize and calibrate with the rhythms of the sun. Because when that sun comes in through our eyeballs, and there's a whole set of geeky terms that I'll spare you all on today, but when it comes through the eyes and when it's absorbed through the skin, through what's called melanin in the skin, that sets off a whole cascade effect throughout the entire body of, again, harmony. That signal of natural sunlight tells our hormones how to behave, our metabolism, meaning how our body produces energy, how to function. It controls our digestion, our blood sugar regulation. There is all sorts of things that just simple natural light cues provides to the body. And so I never, ever want to underestimate the power of just spending time outside, letting the sunlight get in your eyes, letting the sunlight get on your skin. And if we want to talk about just really simple ways to practice this, I'm always going to advocate first and foremost for what I call first morning light. So if you can, within a few minutes of waking, get outside directly in the sun. If you just have a couple minutes even, that's certainly better than nothing. If you have time to take a little walk, even better. Some women, I have some clients who are just in a season of life where they really don't have a lot of time in the morning. Then I just get them to open their blinds and get the sunlight in through their eyes in that way. Outside of that, you can just look to spend truly as much time as possible outside. And then at night, thinking about kind of what is the opposite of this natural sunlight. The complete opposite of that is blue light, is our screens that we so often live in front of, whether TVs, cell phones, iPads. And for a lot of humans, that light comes in even more so at night, right? Because we're used to those things kind of being our wind down routine. And there's a whole deleterious domino effect of that light and the way that it impacts the brain and our circadian rhythm and sleep at night. So the more that we can minimize and work to just kind of break free from our devices at night, that is only going to benefit your body and your mind in ways that are truly hard to comprehend sometimes. So starting with the light. Number two, and you all will see this as we go on, like none of these are really exclusive to spring, but they're kind of themed. And so when I say connecting with your food, obviously that's something that I would love all women and all humans to do all year long. But there's something about spring, and I think being back in a climate and a geography that can grow a lot of its own food through spring and summer, food starts to come alive in new ways. And we are designed to be in connection with our food. And more often than not, we're moving really quickly. A lot of the women I work with are just trying to get adequately fueled because they're under-fueled or perhaps eating, some of the wrong types of fuel for their unique body. And so it's just kind of slamming food in. And when we can slow down and really be with our food, that's ultimately a direct portal to another connection with Mother Nature, because that is where our food comes from, especially if we're trying to eat whole foods that did come from the earth. Then it's this direct, again, connection with Mother Nature through what's going into our body. And if we're still working with this idea of understanding that every choice we make in the way that we live our life, everything is sending a signal to our physical body, well, that goes for food too. Food is one of the most powerful signals that our cells receive, and it helps them understand how to do their jobs or potentially how to dysfunction. And even the way that we eat can do that as well. So when we really start to think about food as a gift from the earth, changes a lot of perspective, right? We go from thinking, oh, I just need to eat something, I just need to get this into, this is another point where I can connect with Mother Nature. And I want to read a really short little excerpt from this book. It's called The Service Berry. This is by Robin Wall Kimmerer. If anyone is familiar, it's a very short and simple but profound read. And the author has spent a lot of time with a traditional Native American tribe, and it's called the Anishinaabe tribe. So that's the reference she's making here at the beginning. But I want to read this. It's just short. In the Anishinaabe worldview, it's not just fruits that are understood as gifts, rather all of the sustenance that the land provides, from fish to firewood. Everything that makes our lives possible, the splints for baskets, roots for medicines, the trees whose bodies make our homes, and the pages of our books, is provided by the lives of more than human beings. This is always true, whether it's harvested directly from the forest or whether it's mediated by commerce and harvested from the shelves of a store. It all comes from the earth. When we speak of these not as things or natural resources or commodities, but as gifts, our whole relationship to the natural world changes. And so when we can apply that to our food and really think about every bite, every ingredient, everything we purchase as a gift from this earth, it does radically change our relationship to what's on our plates and what's going on into our bodies. And it also, I think, can create some thought provocation for where we buy that food. And the more that we can shuttle our food resources to in our backyards, I think we are so lucky to live in Larimer County, where there are a lot of local farmers. I am so excited for the farmers market to start again. I know we've had the winters market, it's just a little different vibe. But, you know, preferencing where we can, purchasing food from local, our backyard, there's profound impacts when food comes directly from the soil that we live in. Our body truly recognizes that and picks it up. So just thinking about all of this and thinking about changing that paradigm that you might have of food as a connection point with the earth can go a long way. And I think being in spring can help reinvigorate that a little bit more deeply. Number 3 is this potential nudge that maybe many of us have already felt, which is, and that we've all been very familiar with over time, of this idea of spring cleaning our environment. And I think there's real truth to this. There's actually a lot of history in lots of different ancient traditions and wisdoms that spring is a time to, again, renew and clean and awaken new things. And I am a firm believer that one of the most overlooked parts of our well-being and even our physical health is the quality of physical environments that we live in. So of course our home, but if that's an office that you spend a lot of time in, maybe even a car for those that drive a lot, thinking about how can I refresh this space, what needs to go, what needs to be maybe reorganized or tidied, because I'm certain we've all had an experience where when the house is kind of a mess and untidy and things are unorganized, we feel that. We feel that in our mind and our bodies, and it impacts us. And so the more that we can align our physical spaces to match what we would hope our internal environment to be, we're supporting ourselves in a deeper way there. The same goes for your body. So this idea of spring cleaning your body can be very potent too. I work with, there's kind of different phases of the journey that I take women on in the work that they do, but a kind of phase or a season in their journey is always focused on detoxification. And I want to give a huge preface here that when I talk about detox, that's gotten a lot of marketing buzzwords over the years. There's, if the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, detox products and supplements are multi-millions of dollars within that. And that's not what I'm talking about. The body has its own brilliance and wisdom in how it detoxifies, meaning relieves us and clears toxins to protect us. And that wisdom is in every body, but there are also a lot of things in this modern day life that can impair those pathways and those processes from performing in the way that they're supposed to. And a lot of that comes down to the toxic exposures that we are just up against in this day and age. That's a reality. In the air that we breathe, microplastic research is booming right now. There's truly, I mean, a lot of this evidence is irrefutable at this point of the implications of things like microplastics, VOCs, herbicides and pesticides, all of the impacts on women's health as endocrine disruptors, on our hormone health, infertility, creating toxic cells, and even in some cases cancers. And so being cognizant about what's out there is very important, and tempering that with understanding if we get too fearful about toxins and living our life, I consider fear another toxin in the body. And so my intention is never to have women just fearing, being in the outside world and existing, but trusting that your body is able to detoxify if, again, we give it the right resources. The challenge is that there are a lot of things now with modern science. We understand detoxification can become impaired in women's bodies and human bodies for lots of different reasons. Sometimes that can come down to certain genetic SNPs that we have. It can come down to certain nutrient deficiencies. There's a whole subset of nutrients that act as what I call prerequisites for the body being able to detoxify and clear out these toxins. And it's not really a surprise that those are some of the most common nutrient deficiencies I see in women. And so there's a lot of ways that the detox, again, processes and pathways can kind of underperform and also be overwhelmed, what's called toxic burden, when there's more toxic accumulation in the body than what the body can handle. That is a very real thing. And that can create conditions, pathologies, symptoms, any of the above. So when we talk about how do we naturally support the body's detoxification processes, there's a huge number of ways we can do that. This is not about juice cleanses, water fasts, master cleanses. None of those are truly detoxifying the body. From a really geeky level, true detoxification is called biotransformation, meaning the body is transforming the toxin into being released through urine, stool, bile. There's a whole set of phases that happen in the body. So when we talk about some of the more fad things, we're not getting at the same thing. What we can do that is tried and true, and some of the simplest things to support this, is number one, hydration. When we are chronically dehydrated, it's always going to be much harder for the body to detoxify because we release toxins through urine and stool and sweat and air. And so just simple hydration practices can be profound. And again, those look a little different depending on each woman. It's very helpful when I do have all the labs and all the history understanding so we can fine tune this. But generally speaking, 90 to 100 ounces of just good filtered water a day is a really good benchmark to aim for. And sipping on that over the course of the day rather than chugging. Other than the morning, we wake up dehydrated. So first morning hydration is very, very key as well. Even for some women, just dialing in, getting 12 to 16 ounces of water in the morning can be profound. I've had women that have been chronically constipated, and sometimes that's all they need. So that's a really simple one. And in a similar vein, sweating. Sweating is medicine. My sister used to have a poster in her house many years ago that said the cure for everything is salt, sweat, tears, and the sea. And I still think about that because those are all very medicinal. But when we sweat, we are releasing toxins and we're moving lymph fluid in the body. There's so much benefit there. So whether that's maybe a sauna or just getting outside and moving and sweating, getting in a hot shower, that can be really, really beneficial for your detox pathways as well. And then the last thing here is just good old toxin reduction. And I could give a whole hour or two long talk on that, but for the sake of today, what I'm going to send you all as part of our follow-up is just my easy little checklist of kind of different categories of life and products and simple swaps that you can make to mitigate the toxins that you are exposed to in the day-to-day and be proactive where you can. And I don't ever want anyone to be overwhelmed by that, but I think just starting with awareness and then maybe working your way into the different things that can support toxin reduction in your life is very helpful. The last two are, I would say, kind of touching on more deeper levels, not so much the physical, but of course they spill into the physical. And this next one is really about living from the senses in this season. And when I say senses, I truly just mean our sensory mechanisms, our sense of sight, our sense of smell, taste, touch, sound. This is ultimately, when we say live from the senses, what that really translates to is also living from the body. And when we're living from the senses or the body, we are being right here in the present moment. And so I bet many of us in this room have heard the buzzword embodiment lots of times recently, or maybe that is new. But really what that means is living from this body versus up here in this brain that we're all so hardwired and conditioned to live from. It takes training and it takes practice to shift over and over again from thinking and words into what is my direct experience in this moment and in this body. And that's ultimately what mindfulness really is being aware of our direct experience. And so you can play with this. I invite you to play with this, especially the rest of the time today while we're in this more intentional, slow space. For me personally, living from the senses has to start, the root of that starts with slowing down, because when we're in the speed of life and in that kind of autopilot mode that most of us operate in, and that's not a personal fault or shortcoming, that's just how being human is sometimes. But when we can slow down and pause first, that's when we can shift into more of these sensory experiences, and we can be with the bird songs that we hear outside, or the sound bath that we're going to take in later, or we can pick up on a scent that we might have otherwise bypassed, or we can taste our food through a new lens that we might have never tasted it through before. And as you practice this today and even beyond our time today, what you might notice is when we start to live more from the senses, the brain still wants to talk about it. So you might notice when you're in the sound bath, the brain will say, oh, that's so lovely. That sound is so lovely. And the difference there is just shifting into just right there in the sound, right? We're not creating a thought about it. We're not creating a mental narrative about anything. It's again that direct experience of hearing, smelling, feeling our body, feeling our breath, right? And even in our yoga practice, movement is one of the best ways to be right in your body, because there's so many different sensory experiences you can tune into. So I think that it can start to feel a little bit easier for people to be in the senses in spring, because naturally we walk outside and it's a feast for the senses. And so it can help wake us up from that a little bit more easily. The last little practice I want to share, or paradigm, it's spring, and so it's a really great time to lighten up. And this is a lesson that I have been thinking on, playing with, experimenting with for the last few years, because it's been the case in my own life and so many women who I work with and just know that we go through healing journeys in life. Whether you want to call it a healing journey or an awakening or a change or transformation. And initially, I think it's important and it can be helpful for those periods of life to have some heaviness and kind of some darkness and introspection. And if you've heard the phrase dark night of the soul, like that's very real. And there's a time and a place for that. And there's a time to lighten up. And there's a time to loosen up and just start to kind of dance with life in new ways. And some ways that we can do that, and I believe we were designed to do as women, are to laugh to dance, and to sing. And we innocently forget to do these things. They can feel foreign to us, frankly. We might have never done any of these things. Or if we do, we take them really seriously. I grew up dancing. I started dancing when I was 5 years old, and at one point I wanted to be a professional dancer, and so I was always taking dance very seriously. It was, what do I look like? How am I performing, right? And now I just like to dance and look, who cares what I look like? Like, my husband was out of town recently, and I just danced topless in our living room and probably looked crazy, and it was awesome. And my body hadn't felt that good in a long time. And so just letting yourself have those lighter expressions, putting on whatever music you want to, dance to it, sing. No one cares what your voice sounds like, but your voice was meant to be heard. And again, I really think it's not even just as women, I think all humans were actually designed to sing. We've been doing that in ancient cultures for millennia, and we just don't do it anymore very often. And so singing, whether that's in the car, the shower, and then laughter. I mean, laughter, we all know that and have probably felt that. Laughter is one of the most beautiful healing forms of medicine that we have. And I've come to realize that more and more. I think I've laughed a lot more in the last year than I did in probably the 9 that came before that. And man, it just feels so good. And if you're not, maybe if you go through a period of days where you're not really around people that naturally make you laugh, you can still do fun little light things. I love to just watch blooper reels of my favorite shows and giggle, or like old SNL skits that I love. For some women it's stand-up comedy, but whatever allows you to laugh and lighten up and tune into that, just that lighter energy, that's really important, especially if you're kind of coming out of or still in the midst of a more intense healing journey. Remembering that there is light and letting in little pockets of that or big pockets of that can be so healing. And again, spring is a time where it feels a little bit easier to access that.